Hi everyone. If you're about to plant tomatoes, stop, because you might be planting them wrong and it's killing your harvest before the season even starts. And by the time you realize it, it's too late. You don't get that time back. You only get one shot to do this right. Today I'm going to walk you through the biggest mistakes to avoid when planting tomatoes and how to fix them. And the last one is a simple bonus tip that can completely change the way your tomatoes grow. This first one right here can take out your plant before it even gets going. You start your tomatoes indoors or you grab one from the garden center and you plant it straight into full sun in the garden without hardening it off first. And you're thinking, perfect, I've got my tomatoes planted. Now we've all done this, but then it hits the sun, the wind, temperature swings all at once, and it's just not ready for that. You'll see it wilt, the leaves get burned, and sometimes it just doesn't make it. Now this plant was used to easy indoor conditions, and putting it right outside into the garden without hardening it off, this is a shock to the plant. So what you've got to do to fix this mistake is to ease into it. A few days of shade, then a little morning sun, and then build from there until it's outdoors 24/7. That's when it's ready to go out in the garden. If you don't want to wait that long, what you want to do when you first get it planted is just give it some temporary shade, some shade cloth, or put a lawn chair or a board up or something that will block the intense sun from it for several days, whatever you've got, just to take the edge off. And that way, once the roots get established, it's a little bit more used to the outdoor conditions, it will start to grow and take off, and then you'll get lots of tomatoes to harvest. But if you skip this hardening off step, it's going to kill your tomato harvest before you even get started. This next mistake is where you might really get tricked. You walk outside, it feels warm, the sun's out, and you're like, all right, time to plant tomatoes. And you do. The problem is the soil's still cold, and tomatoes don't care what the air feels like. They care what the soil feels like. If the soil is under about 60 degrees, these roots don't grow. So you plant it, nothing happens, and you get frustrated. And now you're losing time right at the start. And you don't get that time back. And if you're using the same soil from last season and you haven't added anything to it, it can get dense, compacted, and really hard for the roots to move through. It's basically all used up from last season, and there's not much there to feed the plant. So now the roots struggle, and then the plant struggles, and that's how you end up with slower growth and fewer tomatoes. So here's what I do to fix this mistake before I plant anything. I check the soil. I either use a soil thermometer, and for tomatoes, the soil should be between 60 and 70 degrees, so right at the sweet spot here, right at 60 degrees. Or I just dig up some soil, hold a handful in my hand. If it feels cool, it's probably not quite time to plant, but if it feels warm to the touch, it's a good planting time for tomatoes. You definitely want that soil to be between 60 and 65 degrees or warmer in order for the tomatoes really to take off at the time of planting. If you don't want to wait for your soil to warm up on its own, you can warm it up a little bit quicker and get a jump on your tomato planting. If you've got mulch on your garden beds, just pull the mulch back a little bit so the sun can hit it, or throw some black plastic over the area we're going to plant for a couple of days. It'll warm up a little bit quicker that way after a couple of sunny days, and you'll be able to get your tomatoes planted that much sooner. And if your soil needs some help, don't plant into it and hope it's going to get better. This is where I mix in the bumper crop soil builder or top it off with some fresh bumper crop raised bed mix. It loosens the soil if you've got heavy clay soil, adds nutrients, which is super important when you're first planting your tomatoes, and gives your roots the room to grow. Now, if you're planting for seeds this week, quick heads up. I'm running a 50% off all my seed collections right now. It's a really good time to grab them, including the tomato seed collection. So just use code PLANTNOW over at CaliKimGardenHome.com. You get a really good deal on your spring seeds. And thanks so much for supporting our small family seed shop. Now, there's one other thing that still trips people up. Even when the soil is warm enough, you plant and nothing happens. And here's that one simple thing I do at planting that gets it growing right away. I'll show you that in just a moment. Okay, this next one, you might have made this mistake. I know I definitely have in the past. Not planting your tomatoes deep enough. You plant your tomato the same level as the pot. It feels right, but the problem with this is tomatoes don't grow like most plants. They grow roots all along the stem. So when you don't plant it deep enough, you're limiting the whole entire root system. And that means less water, less nutrients, a smaller plant, and fewer tomatoes. You're basically capping the plant before it even gets going. So here's what I do. Pull off these bottom leaves and bury a good part of the stem, or if it's tall, lay it sideways in a trench and make the hole wider than you think, not just deep, so those roots can really spread out fast. Now here's the part most people miss, and this ties back to what I mentioned earlier. Here's a simple thing I do at planting. Most people plant into dry soil and then water. I don't. I fill the hole with water first, let it soak all the way in, so now the whole entire root zone is evenly moist. You don't have dry spots that way. And then I plant. So those roots go into soft, hydrated soil. And this is the difference, because when those roots hit moisture right away, they start growing right away instead of just sitting there trying to catch up. And that one simple step is what gets your plant established faster and what leads to a stronger harvest. Now this next one is where a lot of people really start losing their tomatoes: watering incorrectly. It's not just one thing, it's how you're watering over time. Too much, then not enough, back and forth. And if you're watering every day, just little splashes like this, that's part of it too. Because when you're doing this, you're only wetting the top. And that's where the water is, so that's where the roots stay. Now the roots go to where the water is. If the water never goes down deep, the roots don't go down deep. They stay right up near the surface. And shallow roots dry out fast, stress is fast, and when the plant starts growing and trying to make tomatoes, it just can't keep up because it's stressed and doesn't have deep roots. So what happens here is you get fewer flowers, fewer tomatoes. If you let it dry out too much, the flowers drop and less tomatoes. So most of the time it's that swing, too wet, then too dry, and that constant stress. This is what kills your harvest. So here's what I do. I take the guessing out of it. I use drip irrigation because this whole problem is inconsistency, and drip irrigation fixes that. I run this Mr. Landscaper drip tubing with emitters every 6 inches, so the water goes exactly where it needs to go, right at the base of the plant, and it soaks down deep, slow, even, right at the stem, and gets down to the roots. It doesn't just sit on the surface. And it stays consistent, not forgetting, not overcorrecting, not trying to fix it later. And then I just adjust the timer based on the weather. If it's hot, I water for longer. If it's cooler, I water shorter. And then I let the soil dry out a bit in between watering so the roots grow down and not stay shallow. So you can do a quick check if you're not sure how much water your plant needs. Just stick your finger down a couple of inches into the soil. If it's wet on the top only, it's not enough. But if it's moist down deeper, then you're good. If it's dry down deep, that means you need to water more and set your timer to run a little bit longer. If it's soggy, then cut it back. That's how you dial it in. It takes a little bit of trial and error when you first get going, but before you know it, you'll be watering like a pro. You'll get deep watering, consistent moisture, and that's what keeps your tomato plants producing. Last mistake, and this one surprises people. This is what I mentioned in the beginning. A lot of people, when they plant their tomatoes, they try and force the growth too early. Right after you plant, you want it to take off. You just planted it and you want to see something happen. We all do this. So even though you've already added compost or your soil builder, you water more and then you add more granular fertilizer and try to push it because you want to see growth. But the plant's just not ready yet for all that fertilizer. It needs roots first. So now it's trying to grow up top, but the roots underneath just aren't there yet. And that's when things slow down because the roots are not able to support all that rush of top growth. And you're standing there like, what in the world is going on? It's a timing problem. So here's what I do. Since my beds are already mended with my bumper crop soil builder when I planted these tomatoes, I didn't add granular fertilizer at the time of planting. So at the time of planting, what I do is I water in with Monterey Fish and Grow. So it feeds the plant right away because it's a water-soluble fertilizer. It gives it a nice little dose of nitrogen, but not one big hit because it has nitrogen in the fertilizer that releases at different times throughout the growing season. So it doesn't push your plants too fast, and that gives the roots time to catch up. So once I see fresh new growth, like I am on these tomato plants here, these have been planted for about 6 weeks, that's my signal. This is when I add a little bit of the bumper crop tomato and vegetable plant food. And I'll do this about once a month or every 6 weeks during the growing season. So by getting the fertilizing timing right and using the right fertilizers at the right timing, you're not forcing growth too early. And that way you're gonna grow a lot more tomatoes and not kill your harvest. So plant your tomatoes correctly from the very beginning of the season. This is where your harvest gets decided. Get this part right and everything else gets easier. But get it wrong and you've already cut into your harvest and you just don't get that time back. So I want to know what's one thing you're doing differently this time when you're planting your tomatoes. Drop it below. I love hearing what's going on in your garden. Let's plant these right this year. Thanks for watching. See you next time in the garden.